Good morning.
Hello. We are
Welcome
here.
to welcome to Let's Talk Movies with Moira and Shannon. I'm here with Moira and I'm Shannon. And this has really become my favorite part of the month, Moira. I just want you to know that.
Oh, same here. Same here. I have my little notebook that I keep nearby so I can take notes on things. I love it. I'm so enjoying this.
I'm enjoying it too. And in just a few minutes, there's a long line of movies that we are going to review for you guys. And if you've watched, you know that Moira and I don't agree on everything. And I'm telling you, pop the popcorn because there's a movie that we're going to get to that apparently it's going to be forks, knives, and pitchforks. And I'm excited about it. I've been teasing all week long that I'm finally going to get to talk about how much I loved a certain movie. And apparently it was not Moira's favorite. So we're all ready for that. But Moira, before we do any of that, I just want to say to people, if you're watching this, we recorded this last night. So it's all recent content, but it was recorded last night. I'm watching live with you right now, so you can still be writing into the chat and talking with us as we premiere this on Thursday morning. We love to hear from you guys, and I've been loving getting some of the letters after the episode runs from some of you with requests for movies that you want us to review. And there was a particular request from last month that we listened to, and I think you're going to be surprised because we have a new element to the show. But if you're watching us live right now, as I said, you can still comment, and Traven's going to go through some of the different ways that you can watch us live or in podcast. We do hope that you will write to us and tell us your thoughts, and if there's a movie you want to hear from us on, and to hear us spar it out. Occasionally we agree, but anyway. But then while Traven is showing you some of the different ways that you can connect with the show, we always like to start, Moira, with an update from Taca. Talk to us.
Taca, the Autism Community in Action, fabulous organization I've been involved with for, I guess, 22 years now. Every month we do something called our monthly learning series, and for September the topic is adults. So we have 2 recorded sessions that you can register and watch anytime you want that are on our website. One is preparing life beyond school district services, which I think is everybody's big concern when you're facing that cliff, as we call it. And the other one is about guardianship alternatives, what to consider, which is great because I think that, and it's an attorney that had presented at one of our conferences, and I think that's really great for families because it's never one size fits all. So you have to think about what your kid needs and what makes sense for your family. Next month is October. We do have a monthly learning series of recorded sessions about PANDAS and PANS, which is PANDAS stands for Pediatric Autoimmune Neurological Disorder Associated with Strep, I think.
But I think you're right. I think
I'm right. So that's a really complicated thing, and I think it's a good thing to learn about. But the cool thing is, of course, as we've spoken about, next month is our in-person conference. So we're super excited about that. And the cool thing is, it is taking place in Costa Mesa the weekend of October 14th, but we have some funding for some free registrations. So we are so excited. So while supplies last, we have a special code for you to use, and that code is Moira Shannon 2022, and you can register for free while supplies last. So get in there and get it because we have a limited amount. The other cool thing is, if you are not able to travel to Costa Mesa for this, we have the recordings available after the conference is over. They will be available in November. You will be able to view them through January 21st, I think. And that code, Moira Shannon 2022, will work for that as well. So hurry.
Number. Limited
yes,
number.
It is
so there it is on the screen. Moira Shannon. Go ahead.
2022. And it's first come, first serve, grab them. But honestly, please always email me. If we have more scholarships, I am happy to give them out. And my email, I'm on the website, but it's just my first name, Moira@tacanow.org. And I'm around. So I am happy to help with that. I'm excited that we got this opportunity. It makes me feel good. I want, the more the merrier.
Yeah, and I just love this. So if you look in the notes, in the programming notes that come with the podcast or with the video, you'll see that I've given you guys the link to the page where you go to register for the conference. And at the bottom of the page, there's 2 buttons to push. Do you want to attend the live event in person, or are you looking for the virtual experience of the recordings? Whichever one you push, you'll be taken to a place. And the code that you're going to put in, you put what you want in the cart, and the code you put in is Moira Shannon 2022. And if they're still available, and there's a very limited amount, although you guys were very generous, I will say that, but there are a limited number. We will go beyond that. So if it doesn't work, chances are that we're out of them. But again, reach out to Moira. You never know what could happen.
Yeah, happy to help.
There we go. So make sure that you register for that. But don't wait. I mean, somebody's going to call me next week and say, "Oh, I didn't know, I didn't do it," and I'm going to say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Email Moira, but unfortunately, I think you missed it. So boy, we've done this a couple of years running with Taca, where we gave away scholarships to go. And I remember last year, so many people wrote me and said, this was life-changing. Thank you. And thanks to Taca, because we got those free tickets. It's very affordable. I will say this, if you're buying a ticket, it's very affordable. But even if it's very affordable, sometimes on your journey, there were definite years when I could not have afforded what was affordable for anybody else. So have no shame about that. Get a free ticket and make sure that you go to that. And then let us know I always ask people, okay, tell me one takeaway that you got from it. And it's just amazing what people learn.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. That is so great. And it's so gratifying because our conference team works really hard to bring the best possible speakers and subjects and trying to make it interesting and different every year. And that's gratifying to hear that feedback.
Absolutely. And there's so much. I mean, usually what people say is, "Oh my gosh, how would I pare it down to one takeaway?" But then they do, because there's so many takeaways from it. But I also think, if you can go to the in-person thing, there is nothing like it to recharge your batteries. Just you fills your backpack up. So I love that. And I love that you guys are so generous with it. But it is time to talk about movies.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
So the first thing on our list, we always try to do a movie that we both watched. And it was very interesting what we arrived at this month. The Baz Luhrmann Elvis movie, which, I watched it when we still had to pay for it. It was like 2 days before it was available on HBO. And then it's just been available everywhere. So I think a lot of people have seen it recently. So even though it's been out for a while, I think it's a timely interview. Moira, I'm going to let you go first and talk about this film.
Okay. Well, I'll give you my little recap. It's about the career of Elvis Presley and his relationship with his manager, Colonel Tom Parker. And it has all the flash and pizzazz of a Baz Luhrmann film that we've come to expect. And we watch Elvis rise from a very poor childhood to superstar fame, and no spoiler alert needed, well, I assume. We watch him go into his more difficult years in Vegas and his untimely death at the age of 42. Tom Hanks is playing Colonel Parker, and he is the unreliable narrator of the film. And I love Tom Hanks, but I don't think we need to cast him in everything. And I don't feel like this was a good fit for him. And I feel like the only thing that was missing from his multiple prosthetics was a mustache that he could twirl, because he was so evil. And he was weaving his Svengali magic over the king of rock and roll and, turning him into a never-ending ATM. And I feel like biopic, I was actually having this discussion. Is it biopic or biopic? Whichever it is, it is usually a showcase for the actor playing the subject of the biography. And this is no exception. Austin Butler is good, and he doesn't fall into parody. He's not like being an Elvis impersonator. I've heard he did some of the singing, but my music lover husband recognized a lot of the original Elvis vocals because he's a fan. And the heart of this rise and fall story had me questioning what could have been, which I think it's a discussion I have often about Elvis as well as Marilyn Monroe. It's like they're the same, like they're so iconic and they were so talented, but they were both kind of used and spit up by the industry. And that, so that's something, I actually read a book years ago that Shelley Winters wrote, an autobiography, and she talked about Elvis's raw talent, and he was seeing Natalie Wood at the time. They mentioned briefly how in the movie, how he's interested in James Dean, he wants to be a good actor. And apparently he may have been in consideration for Tony in West Side Story, which I think would have been super interesting and probably super amazing. But that was Colonel Parker put the kibosh on that. He was like, nope, you're doing Blue Hawaii, you're doing Viva Las Vegas, frothy, you know, that's what your fans want. And so he's a tragic figure. But yeah, ultimately it was hard. I mean, I don't know. It was just hard to get over Tom Hanks's odd accent. I mean, I guess that's part of a hint of Colonel Parker. It was not an American. He had fled, I guess, World War II and, you know, all that stuff. So that history was kind of explored. But the other thing that was interesting was apparently he was up for the male lead opposite Barbra Streisand in A Star Is Born, which I was like, wow. I mean, all of those things would have been so interesting. But ultimately he just was a guy who didn't know who to trust, and he was out of his depth, you know. So overall it was enjoyable. I love Baz Luhrmann, so I'm probably going to watch anything he does, but you know, yeah. How about you? What did you think?
So I love Baz Luhrmann and I love Tom Hanks, and I just hated this. I just hated it. I was like, stinky poo poo. I hated it. And I hated it for a lot of reasons. First of all, you know, okay, have an unreliable narrator, but I think that you enter into a contract with your audience when you say, okay, you come into the darkened room or the darkened theater and I'm going to tell you a story. And you have an unreliable narrator, but I have to rely upon you as the director. And from the jump, it becomes obvious that this is a snow job, that this is not a story about Elvis, that this is a story about Colonel Parker. But you couldn't sell tickets to that because why? Because none of us would have shown up for that. If you're going to do a thing about Elvis and you're going to call it Elvis, then I mean, this is a part of Elvis's life, and maybe, you know, we need to be educated about that. But we want a movie about Elvis, and Baz Luhrmann is so smart as a director, and he weaved this together. And the way they did the publicity on this, and they said Austin Butler is doing the vocals. And yet, if you watch the credits, you see that most of it is, as your husband noted, the original Elvis. And I don't want to give spoiler alerts, but you need to watch very closely, because especially in the end, there's a very amazing thing that Baz Luhrmann does that I caught it. And I said to my husband, I said, did you catch that? And because we were watching it at home, we were able to rewind, and I was like, right there. It's a pretty amazing thing. I don't want to spoiler alert, but there's a surprise. And most people didn't catch it. Most people didn't catch it. Because let me say this, Elvis is in the movie, the real Elvis, and he does some flashy editing.
Yes.
So look for that. But Elvis himself is in the movie. It is not always Austin Butler on the screen. So, and that wasn't spoken about in any of the press that I read. But in any case, I too love Tom Hanks, but I don't think that Tom Hanks can always be brilliant in everything. And this was a nightmare. And I have had people say, oh, Shannon, you're so unfair to Tom Hanks, because that literally is how Colonel Parker was. If you listen to the tapes, he also had an unbelievably bad sometimes Dutch, sometimes German, sometimes Russian, sometimes American accent, and that Tom Hanks is doing a great impersonation of Colonel Parker. And I said, but enough of us don't know Colonel Parker, and it just sounds like Tom Hanks is doing a bad job of, and they didn't have a person to teach dialect on set. I blame that on Baz Luhrmann. As a director, you're supposed to keep your actors safe from those kinds of mistakes. But Tom Hanks has been around the, the path a few times. He might have been able to have discerned that for himself. And I feel like, how in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, when Johnny Depp played Willy Wonka, later on he said, well, my inspiration for that was Carol Channing. And then you watch it and you go, oh, I can't unsee that. That's why it's so bad, because you were playing Carol Channing playing Willy Wonka, and that's not a good choice. But I think that if we were to grill Tom Hanks, he would say John Lovitz was my inspiration. I was playing John Lovitz, because that's what he's doing. If you watch it, he is to the point where he does this little thing like John Lovitz does when he's telling a joke where he's about to tell a lie. It's bad. It's bad.
So if he turned around and go, Morgan Fairchild is my wife, you wouldn't have been surprised.
I'm not at all. I mean, if you watch it now, see if I'm lying. I'm not. It's bad. Now, the one shining light in it is that Austin Butler is, I think, a really good Elvis. And I feel like Baz didn't trust that enough, because there were so many in the beginning. He does all of his Baz stuff so that we don't get a really good look at Austin, to see that he isn't exactly Elvis until we've already started to fall in love with him. But it was so, I want to cry for that young man, because I feel like he gave it his all. And this is not Baz's best work. There's some amazing Baz Luhrmann things in it. I won't say that it's not enjoyable to watch, but poor Tom Hanks, it's just stinky poo-poo. And that is my official word on that. You're all going to watch it. I encourage you to watch it. Watch it when you don't have to pay for it. I wrongly paid for it.
I watched it when I didn't have to pay for it. All right, then.
There we go. So now we're at the point where, and I don't know whether Traven, because we never throw to him for this, but now we're at the point where I have to say to you, Moira, what are you watching? And we'll go through this. I don't think, because so many times I've not done it, I don't think that Traven has it. Okay. So tell us, first of all, I think we're starting with the things that we've been watching that are also stinky poo-poo.
Right. The meh category.
Actually, the no. Let's start with the no.
Oh, sorry. The nope. Sorry. My
Not
notes
even
were
the
in
meh.
the wrong place. Okay. Here's my note. We ready?
Yes, but I don't have it up on the screen, Traven. My thing isn't advancing it. Oh, wait. Traven's got the what are you watching? We made this, so I'm going to say it again. Moira, what are you watching? There it is. There it is. We had to go for it. Okay. So, but it won't advance for me. Let me see if I can do it on the screen, Traven. Nothing's doing anything for me. Can you advance it for me to the next slide? Nada is working. Thank you. There we go.
All right. Here's my note. The Paper Girls. And it's funny because I put this in the nope category when I watched the first 15 minutes of the pilot and turned it off. And I was like, oh, definite nope. And then I went and I wanted to like this so much because it follows 4 girls in the 80s who are doing their paper routes, and in the wee hours of the morning, I believe on like Halloween or Hell Night they call it, and they end up stumbling into a time travel war and they're catapulted into the future. And I'm a super fan of being able to meet your grown-up self and your grown-up self talk to your younger self. So I loved that, and I loved that it was 4 young girls. And I was like, oh, I wanted to like this. And then I read a bunch of reviews, which were like, oh, it's amazing. And it was talking about all this stuff that I'm like, I didn't see that. So I went back and I finished the pilot, and it did get better. And so I'm considering going back to it, but I kind of don't feel compelled to. So I guess that's telling me something. But but I always feel bad at how hard people work on something and they want to bring something into being, and I want to give it every chance, especially like after the fact. I tend to look at reviews and go, what did I not see? What was it, that didn't resonate with me? So that was one of my nopes. But again, I don't know. It was a hard nope initially, but we'll see. A League of Their Own, you covered in another episode, and you were exactly right, my dear. It was just pasted on top of a beloved movie. It was borrowing from our emotions of that movie and sort of bringing it forward. Great cast. I really wanted to like it. I did watch the whole first episode, but it just didn't grab me. The most engaging character is the gal that's the African American player, and the actress is Shantae Adams, and her journey was interesting, and that I almost would go back just to watch that. And when she and her friend were on screen, the whole thing, it was like it lit up. But the reviews are also good on that. So sometimes I'm like, what am I not seeing? But it is what it is. So, and then my other, Echoes, that's right. This was another one I gave up. I think I was 10 minutes in. I tend to like this idea of either like alternate realities, alternate lives, or twins that can change places. So I started watching this, and it's Bridget Moynahan in it, or Moynihan, and it just, I don't know, it felt like a Lifetime movie, and it's a series, and I thought, I don't think I can. If it had been just a movie, I might have chucked it out, but I thought, no, I just cannot get into it. I couldn't even tell you what it's really about, except that one sister disappears, but they have had a history of switching places. So the other sister's trying to chase down the info. But again, nope. So those are my nopes.
Don't waste your time. And because last month I went back and looked, and last month in my meh was League of Their Own. And I thought, I talked to somebody and they said, and later Rosie O'Donnell plays a character, a male character. And I was like, I got to see that. I didn't make it. I got 3 more episodes in, and can I be honest? It went from a meh to a firm, hard no for me for League of Their Own. So I'm right there with you, sister.
Right.
Now let's see if that works. Okay, I can advance it. So for me, I didn't have a lot of real hard no's this month, except that I'm giving a real hard no to the Emmys. And it's funny because so many people said to me afterwards, did you watch the Emmys? It was so great. And I was like, what are you talking about? Explain that to me if you would. I just thought it was the worst version of the Emmys that I've ever seen. And I love Keaton Thompson, and I thought that he did a really respectable job as the host. But I feel like it was the direction that was bad. But when they went to the opening montage, and they were going to have all the dancers and behind him that were doing all the theme songs from top television shows, and it kind of like the cameras were in the wrong place, and it looked like the dancers weren't sure when to start, where to go, what to do. I felt like it was a high school review. I just thought it was super duper like meh. And then the other thing, I love that we're getting to the point where we're going to talk more about inclusion. And that part of it, I absolutely love that they really were hammering down on inclusion. But we got into the second hour of talking about inclusion, and I hadn't seen a single person who was differently abled. And I was like, oh. So when you say inclusion, you're talking about gender and race, but neurodiversity and being differently abled physically aren't on your radar yet. And then I was about done. And then they did the in memoriam, and I want to get out the pitchforks with the in memoriams. They get these and they had John Legend. It's fabulous. Have John Legend sing. John Legend is amazing, and yes, I want to watch John Legend. But if somebody has worked their whole life and you're going to do the in memoriam, you should full screen those people.
Mhm.
And award shows aren't doing that anymore. And I'm like, then why are you doing it? Why is it about the performing artists that you have up there? I just want to smack somebody into the next week about that. That's all. And then the other thing that I just super hated and wanted to throw my television into the Pacific Ocean. I am one of those people that likes to watch really bad reality television. It's a great way for me to, I watch Big Brother. My husband and I have watched Big Brother since the first year that we started dating. I don't watch Survivor anymore, but I will watch me some reality television, and especially the ones where, people are, have to get married and they've never met. That's a great Sunday afternoon for me. I don't have a problem with that. I make fun of it sometimes, but I watched all of this most recent season of Love is Blind, and these are people who have to meet each other in pods, and then they get to meet, and the whole deal is they have to propose in the pods, then they get to meet each other, and then they go through, and they have a certain amount of time, and then they have to get married, or they have to split up and not see each other again. And I got really sucked into this most recent season. I don't know whether it was the pandemic or whatever, but I was so excited last weekend to see, oh my gosh, there's 3 extra episodes where we're going to catch up with the people. It just was a car accident. It was so exploitative, and not just of the people who were doing it, but of the audience members, because they string you along, because we want everybody to have a happy ending. And again, I don't want to do the spoiler alerts, but for people who watch this, don't waste your time, because we wanted to see that everybody was fine and okay, and that their relationships were going. And then they showed that. And then at the very end, they said, and basically nobody's together anymore. And I just wanted to pick up my TV and throw it in the ocean. And by the way, I watched 2 nights ago, I watched The Bachelor ending, and I wanted to pick up my TV and throw that in the ocean because of the new Bachelor that they picked. I'm done. I'm all the way done. Do you hear me, Bachelor Nation? It's over. We're broken up. I'm not coming back. How you could pick that guy who clearly was angling to be the Bachelor. He's a smarmy so-and-so. And yes, I said that. I'm done. But that's how I felt about it, Moira. I'm just over. It's puh. Would you like to say anything about my no category?
No, I didn't watch all of the Emmys, but I'm with you. I felt like I wanted to watch the opening number, so I found it online and watched it, and it was confused. You were exactly right. And I'm with you about the in memoriam thing. And I get it. Establish you've got John Legend, and then show us who we should be memorializing. So I don't know, maybe we're on maybe I'm on award show overkill, I don't know, but and then I have a recommendation for you. You should watch Indian Matchmaker.
I watched it. Totally watched it. Loved it. No, I watched all of those things. Yeah.
Good. All right. So here's my meh category. I think you actually spoke of Mr. Malcolm's List before as well, or maybe you didn't. But it's a Regency era romance where the most eligible bachelor, Mr. Malcolm, makes a list of all the qualities he wants in a wife. And a spoiled young lady doesn't measure up to said list, so she reaches out to her friend, played by the lovely Frida Pinto, to do everything to meet Mr. Malcolm's requirements so that she can reject his advances. And this apparently was in process before Bridgerton. There was a short film, and it's out on YouTube, that was done in February of 2019, which was like 5 or 6 months before season 1 of Bridgerton started filming. The short film actually had Gemma Chan cast in the main role of the spurned lady. But then when it went into production, she was not available, so they recast. And everybody, I don't have a problem with the casting. I thought everybody was lovely, but it just, I don't know. And actually, I did feel the chemistry between Mr. Malcolm, and unfortunately, I did not write down the actor's name, and Frida Pinto was believable. So meh, but if you like Jane Austen, it's good for a Jane Austen fix if you were so inclined. And I'm always loving all the costumes, all that's fun. So the other one I had actually said I was looking forward to, and that's The Day Shift with Jamie Foxx and Snoop Doggy Dogg. And they are vampire hunters in the San Fernando Valley. So I was like, sign me up. And so the premise is that Jamie Foxx needs to get back into the vampire hunting union so he can make enough money to pay his daughter's tuition before his ex-wife moves out of state and takes the daughter away. So because of his past violations of the union, he gets paired with a union rep played by Dave Franco, who has never been out in the field. So it's an oddball buddy picture, and it treads very familiar ground. Campy action flick, lots of fight scenes. I believe it was the John Wick folks that brought this to us. So that's enjoyable. Lots of shots of Canoga Park and Chatsworth, and that was fun for this lifelong Valley girl. And I loved Jamie Foxx, so that was not a hard thing to watch him. And then Snoop being a badass vampire hunter in a long leather duster coat and cowboy hat, yes, fabulous, but not great, But it was a meh, fun distraction. So that's another one that your mileage may vary. The next one was Breaking News in Yuba County, which I had actually wanted to watch when I first saw it coming out and kind of forgot about it. So I will watch anything with Allison Janney. She's fabulous. The rest of the cast is also wonderful. Ellen Barkin is completely unrecognizable in this, and then Wanda Sykes. It's all of that. But I think the reason I put it in the meh category is because it reminded me of other movies that were actually done a little bit better. So I think that when this reminds me of, and then I go, yeah, that one was better. So we meet Allison Janney's character Sue Buttons when she's picking up her own birthday cake from the store, and instead of Happy Birthday Sue, it says Happy Birthday Suck. And so she protests, the employee ignores her, and of course she takes the cake anyway. So now we know who Sue is, right? She's married to Matthew Modine. He's having an affair. When she discovers it, he has a sudden heart attack and dies. And instead of contacting the police, she buries him and inadvertently also buries a big bag of money that he was supposed to money launder for some very bad people. So the wonderful Awkwafina and Clifton Collins Jr. are on the hunt for the money, and the mayhem ensues. It gets pretty dark at times, so it's not for the faint of heart. And then Juliette Lewis plays kind of a Nancy Grace, Oprah-ish kind of personality, but it's like the tabloids and the mainstream news grab a hold of the story because Sue says, my husband's missing. And so it reminded me of Burn After Reading and To Die For, which are both better movies. So that was I was along for the ride, but
well, it sounds like an amazing cast though, Moira.
It is, and that's what drew me to it. I mean, and I'm not mentioning the billions of other people that were in it that were great.
Well, interesting. So for me, in my meh category, the first one for me, House of the Dragon, I gotta be honest, I had never watched any of the Game of Thrones things before the pandemic, and then we binged it. We took like one entire summer and watched all of it as a family, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. There were things that I had a hard time with because I think it's a little misogynist, but but there are things about it that are also enjoyable, and it's some good storytelling in amongst being misogynist. But I was sort of like, oh, okay, I'm excited to watch House of Dragon and sort of participate with everybody because I missed out on the whole thing. We tuned in to watch the first episode, and I went, I'm not gonna. I mean, it's interesting, but maybe when the whole first season is out, I'll watch, or maybe I'll wait to see if it gets 2 seasons. And part of it, and I'm going to be honest, a lot of people that I talked to, and I was like, yeah, and they were like, yeah, but don't you love that it's Matt Smith playing the one lead character? And I was like, no, I really, here's a terrible thing, but I'm going to admit that after I didn't watch him as one of the people on what is the TARDIS show that I can't think what the name
Doctor Who.
Doctor Who. I didn't watch him be Doctor Who, so I didn't have that relationship with him. How I know him is playing Prince Philip to Claire Foy's The Queen, and he was such a dog in that and now he's playing another person who's clearly a dog and a pig, and it's just like I don't I'm not interested. So it's, yeah, I'll probably pick it back up, but yeah. And then I was so excited. I'm going out of order here. Let's go Look Both Ways first. Look Both Ways. I thought, oh, this is going to, you said, you sort of like anytime it's going to the past and meeting yourself again. And I really groove on when we get to see that there are two distinct pathways that somebody could have gone and what happened. Like one of my favorite movies is Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow. I mean,
Me too. Me
that
too.
movie. So I
Mhm.
thought, oh, this is another movie like that. And of course, it stars Lily Reinhart, and we get to see this very distinct break in her past where, she's either pregnant or she isn't. And on the one side, we get to see what happens to her life if she becomes pregnant, and we get to see on the other side what happens if she doesn't. And it's a really interesting premise, especially for somebody who, like me, who likes that. And it was okay. It was okay, but I just felt that it missed some opportunities and it wasn't stellar. It was meh. And then, of course, the last one, we were so excited to see that Handmaid's Tale is out with their new season. And, we watched all of that in the pandemic as well. And I really wanted to put this picture in because this is what we have seen so far in this, because Elizabeth Moss has this look that she gives when she's super bad pissed as the handmaiden. And I'm telling you, and I turned to my husband at some point and I said, who directed this episode? Because they are in love with this look and they've beaten this thing so badly that you watch when Saturday Night Live starts doing, I guarantee you they're going to make fun of the fact that they say anything to her and she makes this face. Guess who directed the episode?
Elizabeth Moss.
Yes. And I was like, well, there we have it. Are we in love with this particular look, Elizabeth? And here's my thing that I say, it's fabulous when women get to direct. Women who are starring in it should have a third eye. This is the same thing I said about Amy Schumer. I loved her new series, Life is Beth, but she should not be directing herself. And if you're going to direct yourself, have someone that you trust, in the editing room on set and in the editing room with you to be the person who tells you when you have a booger hanging from your nose. Because how can you see that you're directing? And Elizabeth, there's a big old booger hanging from your nose and it's this look. You overkilled it. It's not good. Anything you'd like to say about that, Moira?
I haven't. Is that the newest season of The Handmaid's Tale? Because I haven't.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then I'm behind. I liked The Handmaid's Tale. It was hard to watch. We could not binge it. We had to take it a bit at a time.
Oh yeah.
And the season prior to this current one, I felt like it was like trauma porn. We were just seeing people being tortured and waterboarded, and what part of your body are we gonna pull off of you? And I was like, oh, and but I do like exploring female rage because I feel like we don't get to be mad, and I like that. But I think
you might like these episodes then because she's gonna shovel it at you. She's super bad pissed.
Okay.
And we got it. And we got it, Elizabeth. We're there. But 5 minutes of slow-mo of her looking super bad pissed. I'm sorry, I have things to do.
Yeah, it's self-indulgent. Yeah. Well, in House of the Dragon, I like House of the Dragon. So, but it's just I'm not as in love with it as I was the original Game of Thrones, and I have the same opinions as you. It was a bit misogynistic, but it ended up being such good storytelling, and the characters ended up being really well-rounded. So I was kind of like, okay, but okay. So we are on mine for the It's a Wow. And I'm going to start with The Dig, which was an older movie. I think you had mentioned that you almost forgot that the name of the film. And in this film, Carey Mulligan plays a widow who owns a property in England. And on that property, there are ancient burial mounds. And she hires a local amateur archaeologist played by Ralph Fiennes. And he's doing this amazing North Country type accent, which is fabulous. And they end up uncovering an Anglo-Saxon ship. And Ralph Fiennes' character learned all about this from excavating and working alongside his father. Carey Mulligan's character is not in good health and has a young son to care for. And there's an urgency regarding the dig because everybody realizes that we're in the lead up to World War II, and everything like this will stop once the war starts and everything needs to move towards the war effort. So once the ship's discovered, there's all this jockeying for credit and the intellectuals trying to take over from this farmer type guy that they don't respect. But she respects him very much, and she has a nice connection with him. And it reminded me of a Terrence Malick film in terms of just the beauty of the outdoors and the time, it was just lovely. It took its time. It had themes of death and rebirth, connection and history. Like, what do we leave behind? What is our legacy? And what do we think about the people from the past that we don't really know everything about? And I loved all of that. It was beautiful and understated. So that one I very much enjoyed, because often the films are just coming at you, and this one was a nice quiet build. The other thing I'm loving right now is Bad Sisters. It's an Apple TV offering. It has this, I believe the season finale is this Friday, and I can't wait. It's a dark comedy. Everybody has fabulous Irish accents, so you might need the subtitles. The super good-looking guy from Good Luck to You, Leo Grande, which I had talked about, he's in this. So I am all in on this one. So apparently this is a remake of a Belgian series, and I bet you $1 is going to be remade in America. I just feel like this is ripe for a remake. It focuses on 5 sisters, one of whom has this horrible, abusive husband who has been systematically separating her from her sisters. And he doesn't lay a finger on her. It's all emotional and financial, psychological abuse. And the first episode, if I may use the word, it's called The Prick. And boy, do they show how he is exactly in that. And he says horrible things and does I'm just joking, that kind of gaslighting behavior, really horrible. And as it unfolds, we see how he has really pissed off or hurt every single one of the sisters. And this is them, you realize they're leading up to, he must die. He needs killing. And so the whole process is watching this unfold. And that's been kind of delightful. And there's the oldest sister is Sharon Horgan, and I feel like I've just discovered this woman and I adore her. And she adapted the show for British television. She's in a show called Catastrophe that you may have seen. She's also in another film on Hulu called Together that's about the beginnings of lockdown for COVID. So very cool. And for the U2 fans out there, of which I am a huge U2 fan, the actress that plays Becca is Eve Hewson, and she's Bono's daughter, and she's fabulous. So yeah, so I can't wait to see like how this all unfolds. And you're rooting for this guy to get killed, and it's like, wow, so that one I love. And then Ted Lasso, this is actually a rewatch for me. And I love this show so much. And of course, we know Jason Sudeikis from SNL. He's one of the creators of this show, and he plays the title role. And he's brought in to coach a soccer team in England, where they take their football, as they call it, they take it very seriously. And he and his fellow coach are the fish out of water Americans that are trying to bring the team together. And there are hidden agendas. The team owner is played by Hannah Waddingham, and she acquired the team due to her divorce from her philandering husband. So her hidden agenda is she wants to drive the team into the ground to spite her husband. But she did not count on the pathologically optimistic Ted Lasso, and that's what's delightful. It's the antidote to toxic masculinity. Ted is has a lovely folksy way of connecting with all the team members, and they don't know what to make of him, but they start to trust him. And the Hannah Waddingham, I don't know if you know, but she is totally unrecognizable from her Game of Thrones character of Sister Una, the one that did Shame, with the bell, Shane
Oh,
with. I was like, that is not the same person, and I had to look it up,
wow.
and indeed it is, and she is so glamorous in this that
Yeah.
amazing. And Juno Temple's lovely, and
Oh,
then Brett
yeah.
Goldstein plays a very grouchy, very foul-mouthed teddy bear. So thumbs up, love it. So
Yeah.
that's my wows.
Um, how super fun. And Traven just wrote in and said Bill Lawrence, the creator of Scrubs, also was a part of helping to create Ted Lasso. And of course, the guy who plays the coach, that with Ted Lasso, is somebody that I'm more familiar with. And of course, his name escapes me right now. Terrible.
Mm,
But I had seen him perform years ago because a good friend of mine directed him in a stage show that was called Absolutely Filthy,
mm.
and where it's a take on all of the Peanuts characters as they've grown older, and he was playing
Big
Pigpen.
Pen, fabulous.
And,
His name
and,
Brett something.
mm,
Brendan. Sorry, Brendan Hunt.
Brendan
Mm,
Hunt. There we go.
mhm.
So Brendan, and this was a big deal to me, but so Brendan, and the whole thing is, because it's called Absolutely Filthy, he's the lead character, and the way they depict that sort of cloud that goes around him is that he has a hula hoop that he keeps going the whole performance.
Oh,
And it was
fantastic.
one of the most, I'm just going to say this. It was, and I've seen a lot of theater, and I've seen a lot of good theater in different places around the world, including in New York. It is the best performance I've ever seen by an
Mm.
actor. It was a tour de force. I mean, he completely, and the whole time the hula hoop is going, and it becomes this because, Pigpen is somebody that can't quite make it in the real world. He just
Mm.
can't. And we see that there's a component of, there's a mental illness thing, and that this hula hoop becomes part of the motion that is inside him that he can't control, and he's an addict. And
Oh,
I mean, it's so powerful. I mean, it's funny, it's amazing, but he kept the hula hoop going for the whole 2 hours. And
wow.
so there is an episode of Ted Lasso where he hula hoops, and people were like, is he really doing that, or are they CGI? And I was like, no, I can guarantee you he's really doing that. He's a hula
Wow.
hoop expert. Um,
Awesome.
so, and he was a part of the team that created it as well.
Yes, yes.
And so yeah, we've loved Ted Lasso. We can't wait for the next season to come out, but we're being told it's going to be the last season, which just,
It's
I don't know if I can
heartbreaking.
handle that. Yeah,
Yeah.
heartbreaking, but
Mhm.
it's really good. And if people haven't watched Ted Lasso yet, I kind of envy you because, and I
Mhm.
admire that you're going back and watching it again because it's really well written, really well acted. It has something special in it. There's a sparkle, there's a whatever. It's why it's won so many Emmys. It's really very good.
It's a
Uh,
treat.
it is a treat. Now we're going to move on to my wows. I'm going to go for the low hanging fruit first and say, if you haven't watched The Patient, I have a feeling, because a lot of times, Moira, you watch things that I'm like, ooh, no, I don't like the dark stuff. But I made an exception for this because I happen to love Donald Gleason. Oh my
Mm.
gosh, I just love everything that he does, but one of my favorite movies is About Time, and he is so brilliant
Mhm.
in that movie, and I love him, love him, love him, amazing. But he's different in everything that he does. He's just so brilliant. And of course, Steve Carell is in this, and you might think, "Oh, well, this is going to be a funny thing." Oh my heavens, no.
Mm.
It is serious business, and it's a psychological thriller, and it's very disturbing. It is like, start chewing your knuckles, not your fingernails. And I'm watching it in real time, and it's literally killing me. But it's so good, you guys. I guarantee you that it will be up for awards because it is so amazingly good. It's on Hulu. You've really got to watch it.
It's on
Um,
my list. It's on my list for
and
sure.
Steve Carell is amazing, but Donald Gleason is just like redonkulously fabulous. But it will raise all of the hairs on the back of your neck and make them stay up. I've already had a nightmare about it. And then Last month, I talked about on my wow list the K-drama that was Extraordinary Attorney Woo. And once I had finished watching that, I said, I'm a little fascinated because it's a little bit of a dilemma for me because the character, as I said last week, she's on the spectrum, she has autism, but she's an extraordinary attorney. And she's played by an actress. I'm not going to butcher her name, but she's played by an actress that is not on the spectrum. And this is a little bit of a dilemma for me. But somebody said, you really need to go watch her do something else because she's a remarkable actress. She's like a changeling, like Donald Gleason, that she looks different, she acts different. I said, all right, I want to watch something else this woman has done. And they said, go watch The King's Affection. Oh my goodness. I about died. I loved this so hard. It just killed me. And I can't even believe it's the same woman. Basically, it's set in this sort of, I don't know, mythical medieval period of time in Korea. And there is a king on the throne and the prince. What do they call it when the prince who's waiting to
the regent, Prince Regent.
His wife is pregnant. She gives birth to twins. And this is considered very unlucky for royalty in Korea, the show tells us, because and the guy says, who would ever respect a king who would share room in a womb with a woman? I know, wow. It's so incendiary. And so they quietly order for the female twin to be murdered. And we're off to the races. And because, of course, there's a plot to keep her alive and things happen and circumstance happens so that the girl, as she grows up, who's been spirited away, finds herself back within the kingdom, not knowing who she is. And there are more plots where the person who had ordered her to be killed finds out that she's there and says, have her killed. And this all happens in the first 20 minutes, so I'm not spoiling it for you. But the prince and his twin sister have already met and recognized that they look the same, and he needs to do something. So he masquerades as her. So when the hired help goes to kill her, instead they kill the actual prince. And only three people know, and they say to the girl, you're going to have to masquerade as him for the rest of your life for the good of the kingdom. And so then we time jump, and that's when we get to, but it is, oh my gosh, it's one of the most amazing things. I mean, there are elements. This is what I love about K-drama. It's so well written. There's humor in it that just has you rolling on the floor, but I was on the edge of the seat. And in some respects, it reminded me of the film Ran. I mean, that's very Lear-esque. It's epic. It's everything. It's really good. And there's a romance element that just tore my heart out, threw it on the floor and stomped all over it. It's all in Korean subtitles. It's 16 episodes that are sometimes more than an hour. I couldn't breathe. I was like, I have to get to the end, but I can't say goodbye to it. It was brilliant. And you wouldn't recognize this woman. And she does a really good job of playing this prince. You go, okay, I can see how they kind of believed it. It's kind of amazing. I still can't reconcile that they're the same actress in both roles. And then, of course, I've been waiting all week I published my review of Pinocchio the other day, and I'm getting a lot of blowback of people who are like, I heard people say that they hated it. And I'm going to give you a chance to talk, Moira, but I want to say I loved it so hard and I cried so hard. And every time I have talked about it in the ensuing week, I have cried, and I have said that I think it's such an important film, and I think it's an important film for the autism community. I want to give the disclaimer that I didn't love the original Pinocchio. I didn't see it as a child. It was in the vault when I was a child, and so I didn't see it until I was an adult, and I had real problems with the original Pinocchio. I am the daughter of a woman who was considered, my mother would never have used the word disabled, but she was physically disabled. And it was not unusual in my childhood. My mother was either on crutches or in a wheelchair, and it wasn't something that was going to go away, like it was just a ski accident or something like that. And I grew up going places where we'd have to turn back because there was no ramp. I grew up with having to deal with people's perceptions about you're not really there if you're not like us. And then I became a parent of a child who is neuro different. I don't like saying neurodivergent because it makes it sound like there's one way and he's not that. He says neurodiverse, and I like that, but he's neuro different and he's neuro better. And I know that that is not everybody's story with autism, and that was not always his story, that he had real challenges. You know, and I had to walk with him through those challenges. We named him Jem after the little, see, I get emotional about this, but we named him Jem after the little boy in To Kill a Mockingbird. And it's my favorite movie, and I can't watch it anymore because there's that moment before they go into the woods and the narrator, Scout, as the adult, says, neither of us knew it was going to be the longest walk we would take together.
Right.
And that is exactly how I feel about my son's journey through autism, that it was a really long walk through some dark woods together. And I'm very lucky that I came out the other side. But all of these things together, and I feel like no one tells the story of what it is like when somebody is different, and what it feels like for them, and what it feels like for the people who love them. And even as this started, and I was convinced I was going to hate it. Can I tell you, I was so convinced that I was going to hate this movie, and the movie started, and I was like, wow, it's kind of magical. And it always creeped me out that in the original movie, I love puppets. But here was this old dude, and he created a puppet, and he was like, I wish he was a real boy. And I was like, that's creepy. That is super creepy. How come nobody's questioning that, right? And this version fixed that for me because Tom Hanks as Geppetto, I loved. He made me laugh. He made me cry. He broke my heart. And we get to see why he's wishing for a real boy. And it's the most tragic. And people go, well, it's Disney movies. It's not supposed to be tragic. Really? Watch Bambi.
Yeah, right.
Grow up, watch Bambi. You know, watch freaking Finding Nemo and mom gets killed in the first 4 minutes. Don't tell me and read Grimm's fairy tales. There's a reason why, to help children to deal with all kinds of grief, that these things are there. Everybody grow up. See, I told you I'm going to get out the pitchforks, but I just was so touched, and I thought, all of his cuckoo clocks, which were very Disney themed, and I felt like it was my childhood speaking to me. And I thought that Jiminy Cricket was really cute. And I thought that when Cynthia Erivo shows up as the Blue Angel, that all made much more sense to me. And why Jiminy Cricket is following him, it made much more sense to me. And I thought that Pinocchio was very traditional, which I could have done with him looking a little bit different, but he was a very traditional Pinocchio puppet. But we got to, it wasn't like, what I remember from the original is that it's like, you know, he wakes up and he can talk. But Tom Hanks, not Tom Hanks, Geppetto just says, okay, well, now you got to go to school. And I was like, why would you send a puppet that can talk to school? I just don't understand. Right. But instead, we got to see in this version, the joy of, I have someone here in my life who depends upon me and I want to teach him. And then the decision of, I'm going to let you go be in the world. And it broke my heart. There was the very early on in the scene, he says, I think it's time for you to go to school. And he stands there with Pinocchio and he says, have a good time. And then he calls him back and says, Pinocchio, the world is not what you think. And there are people out there, and please find your way home. And it broke my heart, because for any of us who've ever had a child that couldn't communicate, and you send them to school and you pray and you say, I hope. And now having a child that goes out into the world by himself, and every day I say to him, remember that everybody isn't who they say they are. I just felt like I was being spoken to. And then so many things in this movie where the Emmys did not include people who are differently abled and who are different neurotypical, not than from neurotypical. I felt like that Pinocchio did, that this movie
Mm,
made an effort, and it added all the things that it added were about being differently abled and not being seen and not being accepted for who you are and
mm,
how you feel about who you are. And even Pinocchio is confused, thinking, I need to do X, Y, and Z so I can become something that I am currently not.
mm,
And I won't give away things in the end, except that I had an expectation of what was going to happen in the end, because we all know the Pinocchio story. And when the end happened, it took me a minute, and I cried so hard and so long, because I
mm,
felt like somebody had touched a bruise that I didn't know was there and said it's going to be okay.
mm,
And I feel like every I've said publicly, anybody who has ever felt different or been diagnosed as being different, I think this is your movie. And I
mm,
have seen so many reviewers who just went, well, it was this, it was that, it was, it wasn't the original. And I've been fatootsed with them, because I'm like, I don't think you know.
mm, mm,
Now, you
mm.
said you don't agree with me, and I think you do know. So talk to me.
Yeah, I was actually hesitant even to I was gonna put it in my nope section. That's how much I didn't care for it.
Wow.
But in my gut, I knew you would like it. I knew you would like it. And
Now, why is that?
well, I think that um this is so hard, and I don't want people to get mad at me and cancel me. But I feel like when your kid gets to a certain point, then
Yeah.
you can like really envision I can die and he'll be okay. And I can't do that. And
Yeah.
so that I believe acceptance includes recognizing challenges and obstacles. And we need to do as parents everything in our power to make our kids independent, because right now I say often I can't die. And I know a lot of
Yeah.
parents that feel that way, and like talk about sending your kid out into the woods,
Yeah.
so and our community has very strong feelings on this issue, and there's a lot of identity tied up with all of this. And I don't want to judge anybody else and what I'm like. All I know is my kid and my family. And it pushed a button for me that way. And yeah, so I love everything you just said about it, and I'm glad that it spoke to you in that way. And I think you are right. Disabilities are not often talked about, but I think the other part of it, I think I felt like a real push towards um like and I want to celebrate all of our kids, but I think that there's this focus on and I hate the word high functioning. I really do, because I feel like it's not descriptive to what the individual is capable of. But that tends to be like, yay, look at this kid that's able to do this. And I'm like, yes, good for them. But, what about, and I just don't want the focus to be turned. I mean, like we created ramps and things, which is great, and we should have. Um, but I feel like if we don't see the need for the ramps within our community, then we won't create them for those that need them. And I don't, if so it's a weirdly touchy issue. So it rubbed me the wrong way that way. Also, I didn't find it as emotional, so that was interesting. Um, and I love Tom Hanks, and I do, he can make me cry very easily, but I did not cry. So I thought that was really interesting. And I don't, so I with you, I loved all the cuckoo clocks and all of that. I thought that was lovely and clever. But I feel like I'm often, and this is me and my baggage, I'm often being told, well, you must not love your child because you're doing all these things. You think he's broken. And I don't think he's broken. I think he faces obstacles that a typical person doesn't face. So I love the thing, if you judge judge all animals by their ability to climb a tree, then a fish would be seen as deficient, right? So that I want that. So I want the acceptance 100%, but I also want the recognizing the challenges and not also, I mean, I think as parents, unfortunately, we turn around and judge each other's choices all the time, so that was kind of like where all my baggage is coming from on this one. But you made me choke up with your interpretation of this. It's beautiful. And I'm like, yes. And I actually did really love that they had the differently abled gal that was the puppeteer. I loved that. And she was a gal of color. Good.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And so
Winning.
there's a lot of that I liked. But yeah, I don't know. I guess the voiceless are still the voiceless. And so I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm fighting, and I know you are too. You're fighting for the voiceless.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of the conversation is taken over by those with voices.
Yeah.
And so that was my thing of like, ooh, I'm not sure how I feel about this. So
Yeah.
it's all intertwined, and that's the thing. I'm not judging anybody on anything, because I hate that, because it's been done to me. So that was kind of, I think I had just way too much baggage.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, but it's still, I feel like it touched your bruises too. It just touched them in a different way.
Yeah,
And
it
for
punched
me,
me in the face.
right, for me, when we get to the end, and again, I'm not going to give spoiler alerts, but Tom Hanks says something at the end, and then there's a little caveat from Jiminy Cricket. But it was both of the things, but excuse me. I think that there's a really big difference between acceptance and contentment. And for me, that's a real guiding thing in my life, that there are things that I have to work hard to accept because they are what they are. But that doesn't mean I ever have to be content with them. And they can always be worked on. But
and not being content doesn't mean that you're disparaging your own child.
And I think that it has been an anthem for a lot of parents that, because listen, Moira, people tell me every day of the week that I should not have put my child through the therapies that he went through, and that, that I didn't accept him for who he was. And for me, it's a very fine line, because, I always say, let's work on accepting individuals for exactly who they are. Let's accept them for who they are. But part of being loving and accepting someone for who they are is allowing them to learn and grow. And if we stop teaching people because they are not easily able to access what we are teaching, then what is wrong is the way we are teaching, not them. And we don't stop teaching them. And, and that's a real touch point with me. But I also see in my journey and so many other parents, and I know 100% that you love your child. I know you love both of your kids like crazy, and that you accept them for who they are. But I have seen many autism parents who spin their wheels for a lot of years before they get to the place where they get to the acceptance. And it's a watershed moment when they go, and a lot of people have a hard time with this when they're not in that space, that people say, don't tell me that autism is a gift. I don't want to hear that. And I'm always trying to say, I guess it's what you define autism as, because
exactly. Yes.
yeah.
Exactly.
And listen, all of our kids are gifts. All of our kids are gifts. Some of the
full
challenges
stop.
they face,
all of them are gifts.
Yep. But some of the challenges they face are not. That is not a gift to them. It's not a gift to the people around them. That's just not a gift. But I've seen parents, there's one parent, and I won't say who it is because it's a very well-known person, who said, I spent a lot of years hoping and wishing that my child would be different than he was. And then one day I realized he is exactly who he is, and that I love him unconditionally.
Right.
And that the day that I realized that was the day that I was free. And I think that every parent deserves to get to that space. And sometimes that takes a great deal of support because the challenges are so overwhelming that they're not rested enough to be in a place where they can say, I can be in acceptance about this. And as you said, I think probably I am now. I quoted you the other day. I said, used to say, if somebody wins the autism lottery, and I do count myself as a lucky person who's won the autism lottery. My gut still doesn't accept that I'm allowed to die. I worry about what would happen to my son if I'm not here, but I think he would probably be okay. It scares the what's out of me. But I want to say that I do think that I think that what you said is completely fair, and that this movie hit you in a bruise.
Yeah.
But I want to say to people, I think it's worth watching. And whether you have Moira's experience of it or you have my experience of it, I think it's a lovely movie, and I think it's lovely storytelling. But you don't have to agree with me more.
This is what's great about art is exactly this, is we can all take away, we all bring to the table a lot of what we have in our I call it my baggage. And so it did move me in a different way, but it definitely hit something. But I also love that they're doing, the live action Little Mermaid, and they've got a lovely African American gal playing Ariel.
Yep.
I love that, and I'm gonna cry because I love the footage of little girls seeing themselves, and saying that I look like that. And that's beautiful. So yes, I love that. And I think that, it's an interesting thing. I wish we would come more together as a community. Our community can be very fractured. And I hate that, because I want everybody to get what it is they need in order to live the best life they can. So that's where I'm coming from. So
and of Hollywood,
you made me cry.
Well, I made myself cry. And of Hollywood, what I want from Hollywood is to be telling the stories.
Yes.
And I know we all go and we watch a movie and we go, well, that wasn't my story. And I always say to people, well, then go write your story. If you're not seeing your story, go write your story. But I felt when I watched Pinocchio, I felt seen. I was like, I don't think that I've ever watched a movie that addressed both how I feel about my son and how I felt about growing up as the daughter of somebody who would get turned away.
Yeah.
It touched me really deeply, you guys. I thought it was great story. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, and I thought it was beautiful. But that's me. Okay, we have more to take care of, and we're already over time and past time. So what are you?
Sorry.
No, my bad. What are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to Babylon, which is about the early days of Hollywood when they were transitioning from silent films to talkies. And I watched the trailer a couple of times. It looks delightful. So I'm very excited about that. And then also I will watch anything Daniel Radcliffe is in. I just adore him. And so I would love to see the Weird Al, and apparently it's going to be on Roku for free. I don't know when, but I've heard that that's happening. Okay. And he's just delightful. I love the oddball stuff he picks. I think he's had the most interesting career, and good for him, So those are my looking forward to.
And my looking forward to, if I can get it to go, I haven't had a second to watch The Good Fight this last season, but I love that show. Christine Baranski is so amazing, and the supporting cast is just off the chain. And I'm really looking forward to see how they run. It's funny, my husband and I, we were confused in the beginning because there's a play by that name, but it looks very clearly that it is not the play, but the play was pretty hilarious. And I love this cast, and it's just that mayhem kind of a thing. So I'm looking forward to see that in the next month. But we also, somebody wrote into us and said, because last month in your wow category, you included an oldie but a goodie, Dog Day Afternoon. And we had a lot of chatter from people, and people wrote in, and one dad wrote in and he said, I'd really love it if you guys every once in a while would review an old movie that might be good to watch with our kids, or might be good for us to watch that's an oldie but a goodie, because he went back and watched Dog Day Afternoon after your review. So we cahootsed together and we came up with this new category, which is rewind, things that have watched recently that were like, oh my gosh, that was really good because. So talk to us about yours.
Well, this might make me cry, and I'll try not to, but Buster Keaton's The General is a wonderful film, and I saw it as in a revival movie theater in LA. We used to have this movie theater called the Silent Movie Theater, and it was lovely. Well, at one point, my father had Alzheimer's, and he has since passed away. But during that transition time where things were not going so great, he lived with us for about a month. And my mother-in-law, coincidentally, also was living with us because she was between places. She was moving from one place to another. And so here we are, this multi-generational household, neurologically abled household, that I was like, what do we do? So I said, let's watch The General, or maybe it was Michael's idea. I'll take credit. We watched it, and it was delightful. And my son loves physical humor. So anything with a pratfall in it, he's laughing. And it's just so wonderfully done, so funny. And it was one of the highlights of that very difficult time. So I have a very special place in my heart for Buster Keaton. And I can't talk about it anymore because it's going to make me
wonderful.
cry. So
how
yes.
wonderful. The General, fabulous. And for me, it was very interesting because like your daughter, my son is a student studying film in college. And so he comes home and he watches the most interesting things, right? And a lot of times we'll try to watch whatever he's watching. So this week, it just so happened, I came home and he had The Terminal on. And I was like, why on earth are you watching this? And he said, I'm rewatching it. The script is really fantastic. And I was like, what? Because I don't remember liking this movie when it came out. It was one of those movies where I was like, okay, why did they cast Tom Hanks in this role? And but I sat down and started rewatching it with him, and he started pointing out to me all of the brilliant writing moments in it. And I was like, gosh. And he said, it's unfortunate this movie was made 10 years before its time. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, if it was to be made now, they would hire people who are authentically like, Krakosian or whatever, Russian or whatever the accent was that Tom Hanks was trying to do. And I was like, oh, my dear naive 19-year-old. No, they still needed a name person to play the role. Tom Hanks still would have played it. But I just thought that in watching it 10 years, and it's probably like 15 years later, I don't remember what year it is, things resonated in a different way, having been through the things that we have all been through in recent years about an immigrant coming to this country and being stuck between two worlds. And how do you negotiate that, and how are immigrants treated? It landed differently. And I was shocked to see that it more than held up. He was right. It's very well written. And it probably was ahead of its time. I found it delightful, and I was surprised by that. So just throwing it out there, it was quite lovely. So there you go.
I'll have to revisit that one. I did enjoy it when it first came out, but I think you're right. Sometimes it's great to revisit something because it'll land, like you said, it'll land differently because of whatever's currently going on. So
yeah.
Fabulous.
Anyway, so that's what we're watching and looking forward to. And we love to hear from you guys. We love to hear your requests. If there's an old movie, a new movie that you would like for us to take a look at, we'd love to hear that. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. Did you watch Pinocchio? Now, I have one viewer who's already written into me and said that she and her son absolutely loved Pinocchio. But I'd love to hear from the rest of you. Who are you siding with? Are you team Shannon or Moira? And tell us why. Did it hit you in a very specific way? And what was that like for you? We'd love to know about any of your thoughts about anything that we've talked about. But don't forget that, we're making this live now, that you can be using that code to get the scholarship to the Taca Conference. Again, if you came in late, go back and watch the beginning, but you want to go to the Taca website. There is a special code that you can use. It's Moira Shannon 2022. And they were very generous, but there are a limited number. So you should get on there right away. And if you have friends that were like, oh, I missed out on this the last time, tell them. And then when they're gone. But you can reach out to Moira. Tell them your email again, Moira.
My email is moira@tacanow.org. So,
All right.
and also if you go on the website, there's a link under the scholarships. Email the scholarship manager. That's me. So, yeah, please do. We do our best to get as many people at the table as possible.
It's a great conference, you guys. A great conference. All right, we're way past time, but thanks for hanging with us, guys. And Moira, I just adore you.
I adore you.
And this was just so much fun. I can't wait to see all the movies that we're going to watch. And as things get to, my favorite time of year is that time right after Christmas, right before New Year's and after New Year's, where you really can't go anywhere. The weather's miserable and you just get to watch all of the things that are up for nominated for awards. Bring it on. That's
Excellent.
what I say. All right. We'll see you guys next time. And we're back tomorrow with Stories from the Spectrum. Make sure that you're checking that out. That's all content by and for individuals who are on the spectrum. So definitely check that out. And we'll be back on Monday with another Parent to Parent. And we have Dr. Grampy Shea in the studio next Tuesday. So make sure that you're here for that. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and, one from Moira too.
Please.
All right. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.